Black Myth Wukong. Exciting or a giant red flag? Let's see.
Black Myth Wukong is one of my most anticipated games releasing next month, and we just got a ton of huge details for the game, including a new hands-on gameplay preview that revealed a ton of great stuff. Along with that, we have news about the world of Black Myth Wukong. As you know, the game is a linear experience, but it does take a lot of inspiration from games like God of War with hidden paths and bosses.
This looks very Dark Souls or Elden Ring, people are gonna say.
And even some larger open areas we're able to explore. Now, one topic that's been circulating quite a bit, it's actually kind of a hot topic, is the difficulty of Black Myth Wukong. Now, despite it not being a Souls-like, there are still quite a few Miyazaki moments, according to some outlets, which is exciting and a bit terrifying depending on who you are. And it seems like every time we get news about Black Myth Wukong, the game just looks even better. Well, today we are going to take a journey to the West and cover the latest news, updates, and everything you should know about Black Myth Wukong, like the story, settings, and characters. We have a lot to cover, so check the video chapters for easy viewing, and let's get into it. When it comes to the story of Black Myth Wukong, this game is a creative reinterpretation of the classic Chinese novel Journey to the West. It's also been confirmed.
Now, this is the red flag. A creative reinterpretation of Journey to the West. In the same way that Assassin's Creed Shadows is a creative reinterpretation of Japan. Oh, and man, considering this game is out in the West by China, I mean, there's a bunch of sissy things about it.
That the soundtrack from the game will include music from the 1986 TV adaptation of Journey to the West, which will offer a nostalgic element for fans of that series. If you're old enough to remember it, I doubt there's going to be many that have
literally no one, thank you,
seen or heard of this show, so it might be something to watch for the game's release if you feel inclined. Now, it remains to be seen how closely this game will follow the original novel. I'm sure there's going to be quite a few adjustments that will be made to better suit a video game format, but as the month comes to a close, those details might be more apparent. Now, the narrative is centered around a historical figure known as Tongzheng, a Buddhist monkey that is journeying to the West to retrieve sacred Buddhist scriptures. The story is a blend of adventure and spiritual exploration. Tongzheng,
I love how he says a historic figure, a monkey. That's just so wrong on so many levels. Yeah, this is technically a historic thing because Journey to the West is a historic thing, but you know, I mean, come on.
Zhang is accompanied by three protectors, each seeking redemption for their past sins. One of the protectors is Sun Wukong, aka the Monkey King. He's a mischievous yet very powerful figure born from a magical stone. Wukong can multiply himself and even morph into various animals and objects. Wukong is a master of martial arts and wields a magical staff that can alter its size at his will. According to a recent hands-on preview, which we'll talk more about soon, the story...
Dude, if there's one thing that people know about China, it's exactly this guy right here. Oh my lord.
It's completely linear and easy to follow. The game does feature side quests, and the choices you make will have consequences on the game. After you defeat a boss, you learn more about them, and the game...
By the way, all of this is gonna effectively follow God of High School. If you don't know what God of High School is, that is pretty much Journey to the West, but with a very, very modern spin. It's a manga, and it is an anime also. Kind of good. Really like it.
The game also features many memorable characters. From everything that I've dug up, it sounds like the story will be similar to Souls-like, where you get a lot of the narrative from the before, during, and after boss fights. With Black Myth Wukong seemingly being a boss rush type game, I'm certain that there will be a lot of story told. So when it comes to the gameplay for Black Myth Wukong, it is not a Souls-like. However, if you take a game like God of War and then you make it a boss rush style game, you essentially get Black Myth Wukong. Now, according to GameStar, they said attack is the best defense. In their article, they said that the combat system unfolds its full elegance. In my nimble monkey figure, I only wear one stick and no shield. That's why parrying is only possible to a limited extent. And not even that easy because the bosses are usually incredibly fast and hammered with brutal rage. And then they said if you turn out perfectly, briefly an image of the character will appear at your last location. And then they said if you combine quick and heavy attacks, release the particularly effective combos, but your endurance is constantly emptied. The latter is at least partially refilled with a sip from the pumpkin bottle brought along. The fast-paced fights play themselves surprisingly smooth.
The pumpkin bottle is also supposed to be a divine relic, pretty much.
With keyboard and mouse, but with a controller, everything goes much more smoothly. The article then went on.
The pumpkin relic, I think, is the ceiling John or urn or whatever it's supposed to be called.
On to talk about Black Myth Wukong's difficulty. They said, since Black Myth likes to be called with games like Sekiro in the same breath, this question was of course particularly important to me. According to the developer, Black Myth is more likely to be compared to Jedi Fallen Order, which is essentially a Souls-light game instead of a Souls-like game. But when talking about the difficulty specifically, the developer said, we have two types of players in mind when designing hardcore and casual. In the game, there are many spells and transformations that you could use to facilitate fighting, but hardcore players can do without as well. They then said that skills and transformations are designed to interrupt boss attack patterns. If you're passive and retreat, fights are often very hard. But if you play aggressively and light the white wool with the help of the first boss transformation, it is much easier, or you use the time spell to freeze it briefly. Next up, they talked about the actual character, Sun Wukong. They said, in the journey to the west, Wukong is actually a very humorous character who does not take so seriously. He uses all sorts of ways to defeat enemies, and often not even.
I mean, there's a reason he's called a trickster, but okay, I guess that's absolutely fine. So this is currently very light on the things, and it's very light on the problems that could potentially be facing this game. And it's the fact that China hates the West. I wonder what is there gonna be. Well, what's there gonna be in the story? Well, what are they gonna do? Because there's a good chance that something bad happens here. Now, no one really knows, but, I mean, we're gonna be rolling a lot of dice here.
Violence. We want players to try everything possible to defeat the bosses. The article then continued by saying, by the way, Black Myth Wukong does not feature an open world. Later levels will be much more spacious than what I played, and general exploring and discovering are also rewarded in straight lines. To which the dev said, as a player, we understand how frustrating it is when you follow a path and then you cannot find anything. We therefore try our best to always reward the players with secrets, hidden bosses, and more. They then said, I can confirm after my first session, once, for example, I stumbled away by a secret gate behind a waterfall into the already mentioned secret.
Oh my, a gate or something behind a waterfall. My mind is absolutely blown. Now, admittedly, currently it kind of looks pretty decent, at least gameplay-wise, but I wonder what's going to happen with the story. I really wonder what's going to happen with the story. Will it have any modern-day elements in it? Will it have any of that in it? Again, I am very fearful about the fact that, well, this is literally Chinese government-approved stuff to the West. And, again, people that... I don't know if people choose to not understand this or people are really that dumb, but what China allows in China is extremely completely opposite and different from what China wants for the West and whatnot. It is pretty crazy. Look at TikTok.
Boss. Even treasure chests or materials hide along the way, sometimes even with a twist. One day, for example, I wanted to dig up a flower and promptly pulled an opponent out of the ground. They then said that sometimes enemies can also be avoided via alternative paths. And then there's a friendly old man who sometimes offers to help me in front of a level fed with a particular many enemies. He turns me into a tiny cicada, so I can simply fly past all monsters until my transformation bar has ended. And according to the developer, there are more situations later in the game where I can circumvent opponents with the help of another form. The article then continued by saying the whole game is carried by the story. It's not an open world. The story is very linear and clear. There are different chapters.
Well, considering it's not an open world, obviously the story needs to be an absolutely pivotal main element. But again, I wonder how it's going to turn out. I have doubts, okay?
Levels within them where
maybe these doubts are not non-existent, which would be technically honestly great, but you know, a lot of good things in our day have been ruined by things that we don't know about, and a lot of great things have been destroyed by the greed of others.
you can explore and find side missions. In addition, you get their profile after each boss and you could read his life story. We want players to be touched by the story and remember the characters after playing. Next up, according to a preview from Games Radar, they actually gave us a ton of details as well that I'd like to go over. They said that out of the box, even with no upgrades on its expansive skill tree, Black Myth Wukong is kinetically satisfying. They said still it took some getting used to. The dodge feels responsive and forgiving, but for the perfect dodge, it almost feels like you have to dodge when you get hit, rather rather than right before an attack connects. It's like wading into cold water, uncomfortable and a little scary at first, but once you're in, perfect dodging is actually pretty nice. There's no real parry, it's all dodging all the time. You can at least twirl your staff to deflect some ranged attacks, like a ridiculous rapid fire arrow salvo from one of these standard enemies, which that sounds pretty good. They said light attacks come out quickly, flow well, and sound terrific. The thwip of your staff catch in the air, the woody thunk of
I don't know. From what I'm seeing currently here, it honestly does seem a little bit light. At least at the little enemies. There was a part here where there was a lot of small enemies getting wobbled all over again. Yeah, the transformation, the first transformation that we see at the very start here, that honestly did not seem good at all. And for example, something like this, where he does his typical monkey shenanigans, pulls a little bit of his hair out, and just and creates a bunch of copies. You know, this part right here. And by the way, that's exactly what he's doing.
your last location.
He's pulling out his hair, blowing on it, and creates his copies. That's how it's done. And it does seem a little bit like... doesn't seem that impactful and whatnot, honestly. It's like really hard to tell, obviously, but you know, it seems questionable. And the small enemies, especially with the super transformation that we see here at the start. Look at this.
Actually kind of a hot topic.
Yeah, look at that.
Is the
This doesn't seem that great.
difficulty of Black
Especially, look at this. 3 attacks of the same style in a row.
Myth Wukong.
Look.
Now, despite it not being a Souls-like,
No.
there are still quite a few Miyazaki moments, according to some outlets, which is
Here,
exciting and a bit terrifying
Boom.
depending on who you are.
Boom.
And it seems like every time
Boom. Kinda. I mean, it has impact, but it doesn't seem as big for an ulti or whatever this is supposed to be. A transformation, maybe? I'm not actually sure about that. But this doesn't seem that impactful. This does not seem even that great. So, I really wonder how good or bad, you know, these things are going to be. And where the hell were we?
and even each fight had a distinct rhythm. Some were humanoid and unleashed
Okay.
into cold water, uncomfortable time.
Here.
You can at least twirl your staff standard enemies, which that sounds pretty good. They said light attacks come out quickly, flow well, and sound terrific. The thwip of your
I don't know. Also, if there's not going to be a moment where you just make your boa staff really huge, well, that's going to be boring. Also, by the way, in the myth of Wukong, the thing about the staff is not only the fact that it can extend, or, you know, it can extend like this, or it can actually also become just bigger in all dimensions. That's not the only thing that bad boy does. It also has weight manipulation, only Wukong can technically pick it up. Oh yeah. It can literally just do that. Wukong also has a special kind of cloak and whatnot. All of the shit you see on him is actually special. The tiara that was given to him at the start. There's a lot of ways this can be failed. But there's a lot of ways to make this actually really cool. Which I wonder what's going to happen.
staff catch in the air, the woody thunk of pummeling enemies, but heavy attacks are a bit of a misdirect. You don't have heavy attacks in the traditional sense, you have charged attacks and combo breakers, which should only be used in certain ways. When speaking about the bosses, they said the bosses forced me to play differently. I beat 7 or so bosses I encounter, minus the hidden one I can't talk about, which range from hulking beasts to nimble spellcasters, and even each fight had a distinct rhythm. Some were humanoid and unleashed long weapon combos that forced me to dodge repeatedly, others were lumbering giants
Yeah, you see, this doesn't seem that impressive to me. I don't know about you.
that wield Herculean strength, capable of devastating AoE attacks that demand careful positioning. They continue by saying, from what I saw, there are 3 skill trees, 1 for spells, 1 for general benefits, and 1 for 3 staff fighting styles. And then they said I lean more on the passive bonuses, but I did dabble in the staff actions a bit. One upgrade improved the range of my opening light attack, and another gave me a combo breaker heavy attack that spins an energy point accumulated primarily by dealing damage and perfect dodging attacks. And then they said with a few upgrades I automatically unlocked a second energy slot, and with it a higher tier of charged attack. I could then acquire a follow-up attack to the aforementioned combo breaker, which hits much harder but requires 2 points of energy to pull off. They continue by saying there are 4 slots for spells, and I'm told multiple spells will eventually compete for each slot. It's hard to
By the way, I don't like that system. When you have a bot that you need to fill to unleash a super heavy attack, and then you have another bot to fill to unleash super heavy attack, that kind of means you're probably not going to be using these heavy attacks on anything but bosses. So while a boss fight is not happening, you're effectively doing nothing with them. That is a design flaw that's 100% gonna beat here, most likely.
To imagine ever dropping immobilize, but I'm more flexible when it comes to transformation spells. They continue by saying after beating one early boss, which was a fire glaive wielding wolfman, I unlocked a spell with a very long cooldown that let me assume his form for a limited time. So next up, as you know, Black Myth Wukong is not a Souls-like game. However, according to VG247, it does have some Souls-like Miyazaki moments. They started off by saying, first of all, there are foundational mechanics that underpin everything that is in the game, shrines that respawn enemies and act as checkpoints, a little sippy cup you need to sip from to refill your health, the loss of experience when you die, a stamina bar that drains when you dodge, attack, and eventually guard.
Lots of experience when you die. People are not going to be happy with that.
They then said that the similarities go even deeper than that. Design choices like unassuming bosses that will fall with a fair amount of ease, but then spring back to life in a new form and with a whole new health bar. They sucker punch you into false sense of security, then take advantage of your dented life bar. They then said that there's also poison swamps. Yes, sorry to tell you. It's implemented well, a warning zone if you get bullied out of a safe combat area. That'll chip your health unless you can scavenge herbs from your malaise. It's not just plopped in for the sake of it, it fits the world. Black Myth Wukong also features mimics, there's jump scare enemies, and grotesque enemy designs, which is a Miyazaki special. The hype is definitely real for Black Myth Wukong. I can't wait for it to come out on August 20th next month. Unfortunately, it's only releasing on PC and
Yeah, that's a thing, by the way.
PS5. It was going to release on the Xbox Series X and S, but that will be delayed. Let me know if you're excited for this game, or do you plan on picking?
It's gonna be interesting what happens with this. It's really gonna be interesting. Anyway, Vestimo, bye-bye.